What would you do if, on the eve of your dream wedding, you discovered your groom saw you as nothing more than a pawn in his grand scheme for power and wealth? Picture this. You're adorned in your wedding gown, heart racing not with excitement but dread, as you overhear a conversation that shatters your world. The man you loved was playing a chilling game, and you were merely a temporary player in his twisted plans. But instead of crumbling, you transform pain into purpose, betrayal into bravery. This is a tale of love, deception, and the ultimate revenge, not through malice but through justice. Stay tuned to uncover how one woman turned her shattered dreams into a triumphant new beginning. The evening air was thick with anticipation as Katie prepared for what should have been the happiest day of her life. The grand estate on the outskirts of Florence, Italy, where the wedding was to take place, buzzed with activity. Guests arrived in elegant attire, their laughter mingling with the soft strains of a string quartet playing in the background. The setting was nothing short of magical. A sprawling villa surrounded by lush gardens, twinkling fairy lights strung between ancient olive trees, and the distant hum of cicadas punctuating the warm summer night. Katie stood at the window of her suite, watching the scene unfold below. Her heart raced, not from excitement, but from an unsettling feeling she couldn't quite name. She had spent months planning every detail of this wedding, pouring her soul into creating a celebration that would reflect the love she believed she shared with Harris Montgomery. Yet tonight something felt off. Perhaps it was the way her fiancé had seemed distracted during dinner earlier, or how his phone vibrated incessantly in his pocket despite repeated promises to disconnect for the evening. Whatever it was, it gnawed at her like an uninvited guest at a private party. The bachelor party was being held at a nearby luxury hotel, just 10 minutes away from the villa. Harris had insisted on keeping it close so he could return early and spend some quality time with Katie before the big day. But now, as midnight approached, she realized she hadn't seen him since he left hours ago. A small velvet box rested in her palm. Inside were Harris's grandfather's cufflinks, a family heirloom Emma, Harris's mother, had asked Katie to deliver personally. "He'll want them for tomorrow," Emma had said with a knowing smile. It was such a simple task, yet Katie hesitated. Something about going to him now felt wrong, almost intrusive. And yet, here she was, walking through the quiet halls of the hotel, guided by staff who knew her well enough not to question why she was there. When she reached the private lounge where the party was taking place, Katie paused outside the door. Through the crack she heard familiar voices, Harris's distinctive laugh cutting through the din. Then came words that froze her blood. "Come on, man. You can't be serious about settling down with Katie?" It was Jack, Harris's best friend, his tone teasing but laced with disbelief. Harris chuckled, his voice slurred from too much champagne. "Why not? She's perfect on paper. Her trust fund will help expand Montgomery Enterprises, and her connections are invaluable. Besides, she's completely devoted to me." Katie's breath hitched as she clutched the velvet box tighter, her knuckles whitening. The room spun slightly as she forced herself to stay rooted to the spot, desperate to hear more. Jack pressed on undeterred. "But seriously, bro, is this really it for you? Settling down already?" Harris's reply was casual, dismissive even. "Nah, she's just temporary anyway. Until someone better comes along, someone more suitable for the long term." Each word landed like a dagger, slicing through the illusion Katie had built around their relationship. Temporary, devoted, suitable. These weren't terms of endearment. They were calculations, strategies in a game she didn't know she was playing. Tears pricked her eyes, but anger quickly replaced sorrow. How could she have been so blind? The late-night business calls, the sudden cancellations, the subtle ways he'd manipulated her decisions over the years. All of it made sense now. Every moment replayed in her mind, tainted by this new perspective. Instead of storming into the room or breaking down in tears, Katie did the unexpected. She turned and walked away. Her steps were steady, deliberate, as if powered by a force stronger than her own emotions. Back in her suite, she locked the door behind her and opened her laptop. As Harris's business partner, she had access to everything: emails, financial records, client information. For hours she sifted through documents, piecing together evidence that painted a damning picture of corruption, deceit, and betrayal. By dawn, she had compiled enough material to destroy not just Harris's carefully constructed facade, but also the empire he had built upon lies. As the sun rose over the Tuscan hills, casting golden light across the villa, Katie sat alone in her room, staring at the envelope containing the evidence. Her hands trembled, but her resolve hardened. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. And justice, she decided, would arrive tomorrow, right alongside the wedding march. Late that night, after compiling the evidence, Katie receives a panicked call from Donna, Harris's sister. Donna confesses that she accidentally stumbled upon suspicious transfers in the company accounts while helping Harris prepare for the merger announcement scheduled post-wedding. She begs Katie to meet her secretly in the garden to discuss what she found. When Katie arrives, Donna reveals documents showing offshore accounts linked to Harris and Emily Matthews, his alleged mistress. The two women share a tense, tearful exchange as they realize the depth of Harris's betrayal extends beyond personal relationships. It threatens to ruin countless lives tied to the company. Just hours before the ceremony, Katie discovers that Harris has hired a private investigator to dig into her past. Fearing exposure of her own vulnerabilities, she races against time to ensure her counter-evidence is foolproof. Meanwhile, reporters planted among the guests begin arriving, tipped off anonymously about potential scandalous revelations during the wedding. Tension builds as Katie prepares to walk down the aisle, knowing that hundreds of eyes and cameras are trained on her every move. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within Katie. As sunlight streamed through the windows of her suite, she applied her makeup with meticulous precision, each stroke of the brush a deliberate act of armor against the emotional turmoil threatening to overwhelm her. The mirror reflected not just her face but the transformation she had undergone overnight, from a hopeful bride to a woman fortified by purpose. Her red lipstick gleamed like war paint, a silent declaration of intent that only she understood. Emma bustled into the room, her eyes glistening with maternal pride. "Katie, darling, the flowers just arrived, and they're absolutely perfect," she exclaimed, holding up a bouquet of white peonies and blush roses. Unbeknownst to Emma, these flowers would soon become symbols of defiance rather than love. Katie forced a practiced smile, hugging Emma tightly as she whispered, "Thank you, Emma. You've been more of a mother to me than I could ever hope for." Emma looked at her quizzically, sensing something amiss but unable to pinpoint the source of Katie's cryptic gratitude. As her bridesmaids fluttered around her, adjusting her veil and offering last-minute touches, Katie caught Donna's reflection in the mirror. Harris's sister stood behind her, adjusting her veil with such tenderness that Katie's resolve almost wavered. "Almost. I can't believe my brother got so lucky," Donna whispered, squeezing Katie's shoulders. "You're going to take his breath away." "If only you knew how right you are," Katie thought, maintaining her practiced smile. The next hour passed in a blur of hairspray, lipstick touches, and champagne toasts. Though Katie couldn't bring herself to drink, every ping from her phone made her heart race. Not from pre-wedding nerves, but from anticipation of what was to come. Her private investigator had promised final confirmations by noon. At 11:43 a.m., the text arrived, "Additional evidence secured. The reporter is in position." Excusing herself to the bathroom, Katie clutched her trembling phone. The screenshots confirmed everything: Harris's offshore accounts, the diverted company funds, and most damningly, emails to his mistress discussing their post-honeymoon plans. A knock at the door startled her. "Katie, the coordinator says we have 30 minutes, Donna called out. "Just finishing up," Katie responded, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Taking one last look at herself in the bathroom mirror, Katie acknowledged the metamorphosis. The woman staring back wasn't the same person who'd spent yesterday morning writing her vows with tears of joy. This woman wore her wedding dress like armor, her red lipstick like war paint. When she emerged, Emma pulled her aside, fastening a delicate pearl necklace around her neck. "It's been in the Montgomery family for generations. Harris's grandmother wore it on her wedding day," Emma explained. The pearls felt like ice against her skin, another family heirloom that would soon become part of the collateral damage. "Thank you, Emma," Katie whispered, hugging her tightly. The wedding planner appeared, headset in place, clipboard at the ready. "Place everyone. The guests are seated, and the groom is at the altar." My bridesmaids lined up, excitement palpable. Donna kissed my cheek before taking her place at the front of the line. I waited until they'd all left before retrieving the envelope from its hiding place and sliding it into a discreet pocket sewn into my dress. The church doors closed behind them, leaving me alone in the vestibule. Through the heavy wood, I could hear the string quartet playing Pachelbel's Canon, the same song Harris and I had chosen together on a rainy Sunday months ago. My phone buzzed one final time. Reporter and photographer in place. Business partners all present. Police contact on standby. I deleted the message and tucked the phone away. The wedding coordinator appeared beside me, radiant with professional cheerfulness. "Ready, Miss Grant?" I thought of the moment I'd first met Harris at that charity gala, how his smile had lit up the room. I thought of our first kiss in the rain, the way he'd proposed under the stars in Tuscany, all the dreams we'd shared. Then I thought of his cruel laughter the previous night, the years of lies, the carefully orchestrated deception. The church doors swung open. The wedding march began to play, and 200 guests rose to their feet. At the end of the aisle, Harris stood tall and handsome in his tuxedo, beaming with practiced charm. He had no idea that in less than 5 minutes, that smile would shatter along with his reputation, his business, and his carefully constructed world. I took my first step forward, clutching my bouquet. The weight of the envelope against my thigh reminded me of my purpose. This wasn't a wedding march, it was a countdown to destruction. "Yes," I told the coordinator, my voice still wrapped in silk. "I'm ready." Each step down the aisle brought flickers of memories, moments I'd once treasured but now recognized as carefully crafted deceptions. The soft whispers of "beautiful bride" from the guests felt like bitter ironies against my skin. Harris's smile grew wider as I approached, his confidence unwavering, the perfect mask of a man who thought he had everyone fooled. 3 steps from the altar, I caught Jack's eye in the front row. His smirk faltered slightly when I held his gaze, perhaps sensing something amiss in my expression. Next to him sat Emily Matthews, Harris's business associate, wearing a tasteful navy dress that I knew cost more than most people's monthly salary, a dress likely purchased with diverted company funds. 2 steps away, and I could see Emma dabbing her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Donna stood among my bridesmaids, practically bouncing with excitement. The sight of them made my heart clench, knowing they were about to become collateral damage in Harris's downfall. One final step. "You look stunning," Harris whispered, reaching for my hand. I stepped back just slightly, just enough. The priest opened his mouth to begin, but I turned to face our audience instead. The envelope felt heavy against my thigh as I reached for it. The sound of the seal breaking echoed in the sudden silence. "Before we begin," my voice carried clearly through the church, "I'd like to share some readings, not from the Bible, but from Harris's private emails to Emily Matthews, dated throughout our engagement." The color drained from Harris's face as I pulled out the first document. Emily shifted uncomfortably in her seat while confused murmurs rippled through the congregation. "My dearest Emily," I read, my voice steady, "once the wedding secures the merger and Katie's trust fund is accessible, we can proceed with our original plan. She suspects nothing." The murmurs grew louder. Harris stepped toward me, but I moved away, pulling out more papers. "But wait, there's more," I continued, my smile sharpened. "Would anyone like to hear about the offshore accounts? Or perhaps the creative accounting at Montgomery Enterprises? I have copies for everyone, including the SEC representatives who should be arriving right about now." The church doors opened with perfect timing, revealing 2 suited agents. "No, Harris!" He lunged for the papers, but I'd anticipated this. I let the documents scatter, watching as they floated down like toxic snowflakes, each one revealing another layer of his corruption. The photographers planted among the guests captured every moment, their cameras clicking rapidly. "Katie, please," Harris hissed, grabbing my arm. I twisted free, facing him with all the cold fury I'd accumulated. "Talk, Harris. Like how you talked about me at your bachelor party. Just temporary, wasn't I? Until someone better comes along." His face went from white to gray. In the front row, Jack shifted uncomfortably, avoiding everyone's eyes. "I trusted you," I continued, my voice carrying through the now silent church. "I loved you. But you saw me as nothing more than a stepping stone, a means to an end." Emma stood up, her face a mask of confusion and growing horror. "Harris, what is she talking about?" "Mother, I can explain." he started, but I interrupted. Explain the embezzlement? The affair? The planned merger that would have bankrupted dozens of families? Please, Harris, explain to everyone exactly who you are. The SEC agents moved forward now, flanking the altar. Emily had already slipped out a side door, but she wouldn't get far. Another team was waiting outside. You've ruined everything. Harris snarled, his charming facade finally cracking completely. I smiled, reaching up to remove the Montgomery family pearls.
No, Harris.
You did that all by yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows exactly who they're dealing with. The next few moments dissolved into chaos. The agents moved in. Donna was sobbing. Emma stood frozen in disbelief, and guests were either fleeing or recording everything on their phones. Through it all, I maintained my composure, watching as Harris's perfect world crumbled around him. As he was led away in handcuffs, Harris turned back one last time. I did love you in my way, your way. I stepped close, keeping my voice low. Your way was never good enough. Consider this my wedding gift, the truth finally about the man you really are. I turned away, walking back down the aisle alone, my head held high. Behind me, I could hear Emma's muffled sobs, the continued click of cameras, and the growing buzz of shocked conversations. But ahead of me lay freedom, justice, and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes karma needs a little help arriving on schedule. The spring sunlight hit my face as I pushed open the church doors. A crowd of reporters waited outside, my final touch to ensure Harris's downfall would be complete and public. As their questions rained down around me, I smiled, knowing that while this wasn't the fairy tale ending I'd once dreamed of, it was something better. It was justice. The weeks following the wedding unfolded like scenes from a movie Katie never thought she'd star in. Headlines screamed, "Montgomery Empire crumbles. Jilted bride exposes corporate corruption." Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from well-wishers and journalists, eager to hear more about the bride who brought down one of the city's most prominent families. Amidst the media frenzy, Katie retreated to her new apartment overlooking Central Park, a place she'd chosen specifically because Harris had always dismissed it as new money territory. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her laptop displayed the latest news. Harris and Emily had been indicted on multiple charges of fraud and embezzlement. The evidence Katie had gathered had opened a Pandora's box of corporate misconduct, leading to a domino effect of exposures and resignations. Donna called daily, her voice wavering between anger and desperation. "Why didn't you tell me?" she'd ask, though they both knew she couldn't have helped. Her blind spot for her brother had always been her greatest weakness. Emma's reaction surprised Katie most. 3 days after the wedding, she appeared at Katie's door, carrying a familiar velvet box. "The pearls," she said, holding them out. "They belong to you now." Katie hesitated, but Emma interrupted firmly, her voice steady despite her red-rimmed eyes. "You exposed the truth. That makes you more worthy of these than anyone who's worn them before." They sat on Katie's new sofa, drinking tea from cups she'd bought just that morning. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken words. "I failed him," Emma finally whispered. Katie took her hand. "Harris made his own choices. You gave him everything he needed to be a good man. He chose differently." The investigation revealed deeper corruption than anyone had imagined. Harris's father had laid the groundwork years ago, and Harris had merely perfected the art of deception. The company's collapse affected hundreds of employees, but Katie had prepared for that too. Anonymous tips had helped many transfer their investments weeks before the scandal broke. Jack tried to contact her once, probably hoping to save his own skin. His message sat unread in her inbox alongside Harris's desperate attempts at explanation. Some bridges weren't worth rebuilding. Emily turned state's evidence, of course. She'd always been practical that way. Her testimony would ensure Harris spent a significant portion of his prime years in a federal institution, trading his bespoke suits for prison garb. The media painted Katie as a hero, the whistleblower bride who chose justice over love. They didn't understand that it was never a choice. The moment she heard Harris's true feelings, the path forward became crystal clear. Love without respect was like a house built on sand. It was bound to collapse. Her own company flourished in the aftermath, clients appreciating working with someone who demonstrated such unwavering ethical standards. Irony wasn't lost on Katie. Harris's attempt to use her had backfired spectacularly, launching her into greater success than he'd ever imagined. 1 month after the wedding, she received a letter from Harris's grandmother. Her shaky handwriting filled 3 pages with memories of her own marriage, of watching Harris grow up, and finally, her gratitude for preventing the family name from becoming synonymous with unchecked corruption. "You did what none of us had the courage to do," she wrote. "You saw the truth and refused to look away." The letter ended with a photograph of Harris's grandfather on his own wedding day, young and hopeful, the same hope Katie had once seen in Harris's eyes, the same hope that had twisted into something darker when nobody was watching. She kept the photo, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The charming smile that had once won her heart had hidden a calculated mind plotting her destruction. Never again would she let someone else's mask become her reality. While sorting through documents related to the scandal, Katie uncovers evidence linking Harris to illegal offshore gambling operations tied to organized crime. Realizing the danger this poses to her safety, she contacts authorities immediately, leading to additional arrests and further tarnishing Harris's reputation. The discovery forces Katie to live under protective surveillance temporarily, adding suspense to her journey toward rebuilding her life. During a routine meeting with her legal team, Katie learns that Harris's remaining allies are attempting to smear her character publicly, claiming she orchestrated the entire scandal out of jealousy. Facing mounting pressure, Katie must decide whether to release even more incriminating evidence or hold back to protect innocent parties caught in the crossfire. This internal conflict tests her resolve and deepens listener sympathy for her plight. As summer faded into autumn, Katie found herself walking through Central Park more often. The changing leaves reminded her that transformation, while painful, was necessary for growth. Each step forward took her further from the woman who'd nearly married a lie and closer to someone stronger, wiser, and unafraid of standing alone. Emma joined her for these walks sometimes. They never spoke of Harris directly, but his absence hung between them like an invisible thread connecting 2 women who'd loved and lost the same person in different ways. "You know," Emma said during one of their walks, "I always wanted a daughter who would carry on the Montgomery legacy of strength and integrity. Turns out I got one. Just not in the way I expected." Katie squeezed her hand, understanding the weight of her words. In trying to destroy her, Harris had inadvertently given her something precious. A family bound not by blood or false promises but by truth and resilience. The media eventually moved on to newer scandals, but the lessons remained. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't saying "I do." It's having the courage to say "I won't." 6 months after the dramatic events at the wedding, Katie stood in front of Montgomery Enterprises' former headquarters, now renamed under new ownership. The building's gleaming facade remained unchanged, but its interior pulsed with renewed energy. Transparency and accountability had replaced secrecy and greed. She had been invited to consult on the company's restructuring, a delicious twist of fate that hadn't escaped her notice. The new management sought her expertise to prevent history from repeating itself. After all, who better to understand how corruption thrived than the woman who had dismantled it? Walking through the familiar corridors, Katie passed Harris's old office. It had been converted into a communal workspace, its imposing mahogany doors replaced with glass panels. Sunlight streamed in where shadows once lurked, a fitting metaphor for the company's transformation. Donna had taken over a small division of the company, determined to rebuild her family's legacy the right way. Their friendship had grown stronger after being tested by betrayal. Donna's resolve to make things right only deepened with each revelation about Harris's deceptions. The quarterly report showed remarkable recovery. "We've retained 80% of our original workforce and implemented all recommended transparency measures," Donna announced during a board meeting, her voice steady and confident. Katie watched her with pride, remembering the tearful conversation they'd had 3 months ago when Donna discovered even more of Harris's deceptions. Instead of breaking her, each revelation had only strengthened her resolve to create positive change. Emma had emerged from her initial shock to become a fierce advocate for corporate accountability. Using her social connections, she promoted ethical business practices. Her foundation launched a scholarship program for women in business ethics, named after Harris's grandmother, who had passed away peacefully months after his sentencing. Her last words to Katie had been, "You saved our family's soul." Katie's own consulting firm expanded rapidly, specializing in corporate fraud prevention. Companies worldwide sought her expertise, seeing her as a beacon of integrity. Each new client brought stories of near misses and close calls, potential harassment Montgomerys caught before they could cause irreparable damage. The irony wasn't lost on her. Harris's betrayal had led her to her true calling. In trying to use her as a stepping stone, he'd inadvertently helped her find her path. Spring arrived with an unexpected weight. Harris's trial loomed on the horizon. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Katie took the witness stand. Her voice was unwavering as she recounted every detail. Harris's eyes never left her during her testimony, but they no longer held the power to make her heart race. Instead, she saw him clearly for who he was. A man whose greatest defeat was being exposed for his true nature. The evidence was overwhelming. Each document Katie had gathered that fateful night before the wedding became another nail in the coffin of his defense. His lawyers attempted to paint her as a vengeful woman scorned, but the paper trail told a different story, one of calculated fraud spanning years. The most poignant moment came when Emma testified. She sat straight-backed in the witness chair, her elegant composure intact as she detailed how her own son had manipulated family funds and betrayed generations of trust. "The truth," Emma stated clearly, her voice carrying through the hushed courtroom, "must stand above blood." Harris's face crumpled at her words. For the first time, Katie saw genuine emotion break through his practice mask, the realization that he'd lost not just his freedom, but his mother's unwavering support. The trial lasted 3 weeks, each day bringing new revelations about how deep the corruption had run. Former employees testified about threats and coercion. Business partners revealed how they'd been drawn into Harris's web of deceit. Through it all, Katie sat in the gallery beside Donna, watching the man they both loved reveal his darkest colors to the world. The verdict came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Guilty on all counts. The sentence, 15 years, no possibility of early parole. As the judge read out the terms, Katie studied Harris's profile. Still handsome but somehow diminished. The charming smile that had once won over boardrooms, and her heart was nowhere to be seen. Emily, having pleaded to lesser charges in exchange for her testimony, received 5 years. She avoided Katie's gaze as she was led away, her designer outfit replaced by prison orange. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Emma stepped forward, Donna and Katie flanking her sides. "The Montgomery family has always valued integrity above all else," Emma announced, her voice steady. "Today's verdict, while painful, upholds that tradition. We thank the jury for their service and justice for prevailing." Later that evening, they gathered at Emma's townhouse, not to mourn but to close a chapter. Donna brought out a bottle of champagne, the same vintage they'd planned to serve at the wedding. "To truth," she toasted, her eyes meeting Katie's, "and to the sister I almost had, who turned out to be more family than my own brother." Emma reached for Katie's hand as they sipped their champagne. "You know," she mused, "I've been thinking about what you said that day at the altar about love and truth. You chose truth over love, but in doing so, you showed the greatest love of all, love for justice, for what's right." The evening softened into night, their conversation turning from the past to the future. Donna spoke of her plans to rebrand the remaining legitimate Montgomery businesses. Emma shared her vision for a foundation supporting corporate ethics education. As Katie drove home that night, the city skyline glittered against the dark sky. The weight she'd carried since that night before her wedding finally began to lift. Harris's sentencing wasn't just an ending. It was permission to truly begin again. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. A photo appeared. Harris in his prison uniform being led to his cell. Below it, words from a sympathetic guard. "Thought you'd want to see this. Justice served." Katie deleted the message without responding. She didn't need to see Harris brought low. She'd already seen him at his highest and found him wanting. Her revenge wasn't in his imprisonment, but in the freedom she'd found by exposing the truth. The wedding dress that had hung in her closet like a ghost was finally packed away, donated to a charity that helped domestic abuse survivors rebuild their lives. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. What was meant to be a symbol of love and trust would now help other women write their own stories of redemption. As she fell asleep that night, Katie thought about the girl who'd once dreamed of becoming Mrs. Montgomery. She'd been naive, perhaps, But her belief in justice had been her saving grace. Harris had seen her trust as weakness, never realizing it would be his undoing. The truth had cost her a wedding but had given her something far more valuable. The knowledge that sometimes the greatest love story isn't about finding the right partner, but about finding the strength to stand alone for what's right. 1 year after Harris's sentencing, Katie stood in her office overlooking Central Park, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of redemption. On her desk sat a framed photo of Emma, Donna, and her at the opening of the Foundation's first Ethics Center. Next to it lay a small velvet box containing the Montgomery family pearls. No longer a symbol of betrayal but a reminder that sometimes the most precious inheritance is the courage to stand for what's right. The truth hadn't given her the happy ending she'd once dreamed of. Instead, it had given her something far more valuable. A purpose, a mission, and a family bound not by blood or marriage but by an unwavering commitment to integrity. Her consulting firm had grown exponentially, with offices now in New York, London, and Singapore. Companies worldwide sought their expertise in fraud prevention and corporate transparency. Each new client brought with them stories of near misses and close calls, potential harassment Montgomerys caught before they could cause irreparable damage. It was during a lecture at Columbia Business School that Katie met Marcus Chin, a visiting professor from Stanford specializing in business ethics and corporate responsibility. After the lecture, Marcus approached her with an interesting proposition. "Miss Grant, your experience could revolutionize how we teach ethics in business schools. Would you consider collaborating on a comprehensive curriculum?" There was something refreshingly genuine about him. No hidden agendas, no carefully crafted persona, just authentic passion for creating positive change. Emma noticed it first during a foundation board meeting where Marcus presented his ideas. "He looks at you the way one should look at someone they admire," she remarked afterward. "Not as a prize to be won, but as an equal to be respected." Their professional collaborations slowly evolved into coffee discussions that stretched into dinner conversations. Marcus never pushed, never rushed. He understood the weight of her past and respected the strength it had given her. Donna teased her mercilessly about the way her eyes lit up when discussing their curriculum project. "You know, Katie, it's okay to be happy again, to trust again." But trust wasn't something Katie gave easily anymore. One evening, over dinner at a quiet restaurant in Greenwich Village, she told Marcus everything. Not just the headlines he'd read, but the raw truth of loving someone who saw you as nothing more than a means to an end. His response was simple but profound. "Thank you for trusting me with your story. It couldn't have been easy to share." Months passed and their curriculum project flourished. Business schools across the country began adopting their ethics program. Marcus and Katie spent countless hours refining case studies, including the Montgomery scandal, now taught as a landmark example of corporate fraud detection. One rainy evening, as they walked through Central Park after a successful presentation, Marcus stopped under the shelter of a massive oak tree. "You know what amazes me about you, Katie?" he said, raindrops glistening in his hair. "Not just your strength in exposing the truth, but your courage to remain open to possibility even after everything." She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw what Emma had noticed months ago. Here was a man who had built his career on teaching ethics not because it was profitable but because he believed in it. Someone who saw her past not as baggage but as wisdom earned. "The truth is," he continued, "I've fallen in love with you, not the headline version of you but the real you. Brilliant, compassionate, and unafraid to stand for what's right. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to show you that love can be honest, straightforward, and true." Standing there in the rain, Katie felt something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. Not the naive hope of her younger self, but something stronger, tempered by experience and wisdom. Donna and Emma were ecstatic when she finally admitted she was dating again. "Life has a way of bringing us exactly what we need," Emma said, squeezing her hand. "Sometimes it's the courage to expose a lie. Sometimes it's the strength to embrace a truth." The Foundation's annual gala provided a perfect opportunity to make their relationship public. As Marcus and Katie danced under the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Hotel, the same one where she'd overheard Harris's betrayal, she realized how far she'd come. "You're thinking about that night, aren't you?" Marcus asked softly. "Yes," she admitted, "but not with regret. That night taught me to trust my instincts, to demand truth and love. It led me here." He smiled, understanding in his eyes. To quote your famous speech, the truth doesn't always give you the ending you wanted, but it always leads you to the one you need. As they swayed to the music, Katie caught Emma's knowing smile from across the room. She raised her glass in a subtle toast, and Katie knew she was thinking what she was. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in building something beautiful from the lessons it taught you. The truth that shattered her world 2 years ago had led her to a love that didn't need to be tested or proved. A love as transparent and steady as the principles they both lived by. During a high-profile ethics conference, Katie is confronted by an enraged former colleague of Harris's, who accuses her of ruining lives unnecessarily. The heated exchange threatens to derail the event until Marcus steps in, defending Katie's actions with a powerful speech about the importance of accountability. This moment cements their bond and wins over skeptical attendees, turning a potential disaster into a triumph for transparency advocates. While finalizing plans for the foundation's expansion, Katie receives anonymous threats warning her to stop pursuing certain investigations linked to former associates of Harris. Despite the danger, she resolves to push forward, enlisting Marcus's help to ensure her safety. This subplot adds tension and highlights her unwavering dedication to justice, even in the face of personal risk. 3 years to the day after her almost wedding to Harris, Katie stood in front of her full-length mirror, adjusting a different white dress. This one was simpler, more elegant, a reflection of the woman she'd become. Emma fussed with her veil, her eyes glistening with genuine happiness. "This time," she whispered, "everything is exactly as it should be." Donna burst into the room, champagne in hand. "Marcus is practically floating out there, and you should see the students who showed up. Half of Columbia's business school came to watch their favorite professors tie the knot." The venue wasn't a grand cathedral like her first planned wedding. Instead, they chose the botanical gardens where Marcus and Katie had spent countless hours discussing their curriculum between stolen kisses and shared dreams. The guest list was smaller, but every person present represented a genuine connection, a true relationship built on mutual respect and understanding. "Ready?" Emma asked, holding out a familiar velvet box. The Montgomery pearls gleamed in the morning light. Once a symbol of a dynasty built on deception, they now represented something different, the power of transformation, of turning pain into purpose. "Actually," Katie smiled, closing the box gently, "I think these belong to the foundation now, a reminder of where we've been and how far we've come." Emma's eyes welled with tears as she hugged her. "You truly are the daughter I was meant to have." The ceremony was everything her first one wasn't: authentic, intimate, and filled with genuine joy. Marcus's vows spoke not of ownership or obligation but of partnership and shared purpose. When he mentioned how her story had inspired him long before they met, how her courage had made him a better educator, she saw the same conviction in his eyes that she'd noticed during their first meeting. Her own vows acknowledged the journey that had led her here. "Love isn't about perfect moments or grand gestures," she said, looking into his steady gaze. "It's about choosing truth over comfort, growth over complacency, and finding someone who makes those choices with you every day." The reception buzzed with energy as students mingled with business leaders, all united by their shared commitment to ethical leadership. The Foundation's newest initiative, a scholarship program for whistleblowers seeking to rebuild their careers, had just launched, turning another page in their story of transformation. Donna clinked her glass for the toast, her smile radiant. "To my sister, not by blood but by choice, who taught us all that the greatest love story isn't about finding the right person but about becoming the right person. And to Marcus, who proved that true love doesn't ask you to compromise your values, it elevates them." Later, as Marcus and Katie swayed to their first dance, he whispered, "Do you ever think about how different life would have been if you hadn't overheard Harris that night?" She looked around the room, at the family she'd found, the purpose she'd discovered, and the man who loved her not despite her past but because of how it. And there you have it. A story of love, betrayal, and ultimate redemption. Katie's journey reminds us all that sometimes the greatest act of love is choosing truth over comfort, and justice over fear. If this tale of courage and transformation resonated with you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire and empower. Do you have a story of standing up for what's right or turning pain into purpose? Drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and remember, The truth may not always give you the ending you wanted, but it will always lead you to the one you need. Until next time, take care, stay true to yourself, and keep fighting for what's right. See you again soon.